Hi, this is Dee, and you're listening to my podcast, Let Me Clear My Throat. On tonight's episode, we're going to talk about abandonment and the fear of it and different ways to treat it and what to look for, and just some general things. Obviously, I typed some stuff up on here that I got from healthline.com, and I'll also probably be free micing it as well. And if you're familiar with my podcast, you know that's kind of what I do. So this particular article was from healthline.com. It was written by Anne Pretegalo. No, I totally butchered her name. Petrangelo. I hope that's the way she pronounces it. And I'm sorry, it was written, yeah, let me get this right, and reviewed by Timothy Lang on February 13th, 2019. So it was by one of them. No, I like to give, obviously, credit where credit is due in citations. So um, I got this off of healthline.com. So it starts off with the overview. Basically, it says fear of abandonment is the overwhelming worry that people close to you will leave. Anyone can develop a fear of abandonment. It can be deeply rooted in a traumatic experience you had as a child or a distressing relationship in an adulthood. If you fear abandonment, it can be almost impossible to maintain healthy relationships. This paralyzing fear can lead you to wall yourself off and avoid getting hurt, or try to avoid getting hurt, rather. Or you might be inadvertently sabotaging your relationships, whether intentionally or subconsciously. The first step in overcoming your fear is to acknowledge why you feel this way. You may be able to address your fear on your own or maybe with therapy. But fear of abandonment may also be part of a personality disorder that needs treatment. And it goes on to say types of fear of abandonment. You may fear that someone you love is going to physically leave and not come back. You may fear that someone will abandon your emotional needs. Either it can hold you back in relationships with a parent, a partner, or a friend. I know, like in certain relationships and stuff, obviously, if you've been in a relationship and you've had a lot of trauma, or maybe somebody was kind of doing the back and forth game, if you will, obviously, you have always the fear of, being abandoned and worrying, like, did I do something wrong, or you got to better yourself, or just always questioning yourself, and sometimes, being ghosted and different factors like that obviously give you abandonment issues. I myself have severe abandonment issues in a lot of areas, and I try to work through those. But um, sometimes trying to put a block up or a wall, if you will, might seem like the right thing to do, but in the same aspect, it can be overwhelming because everybody wants to be loved and have a relationship and have some positivity. But unfortunately, when you have the fear of abandonment or something of that nature, it's a little bit hard to put your walls down because you always have the fear of, something being repeated and just having an issue of, you know, not being wanted and always questioning your self worth. It says fear of emotional abandonment. It may be less obvious than physical abandonment, but it can be less traumatic. We all have emotional needs. When those needs are not met, you may feel unappreciated, unloved, or even disconnected. You can feel very much alone even when you're in a relationship with someone who's physically present. So I always say sometimes you can be in a crowded room and feel very alone, and sometimes be in a room full uh, of people dressed up like chairs and feel completely at home. um, it says if you experience emotional abandonment in the past, especially as a child, you may live in fear that it will happen again. Fear of excuse me, fear of abandonment in children. It's absolutely normal for babies and toddlers to go through a separation anxiety stage. They may cry, scream, or refuse to let go when a parent or primary caregiver has to leave. Children at this stage have a hard time understanding when or if that person will even return. As they begin to understand that loved ones do return, they outgrow their fear. For most children, this happens by the age around 3 years old. I know, like sometimes when you take your children into preschool or even kindergarten, actually, if they're not used to being away from you, um, it could be a big, huge thing of separating and going off on their own because, they're so little and handing them the world per se could be very overwhelming for them and look so huge. And then also, too, you have certain children whose parents may be, back and forth, maybe in jail or prison, or they might be working a lot, or maybe they go to the store and get cigarettes and they don't return, or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, they have severe abandonment issues, always worrying and wondering, if that person is ever going to come back in their life. And when they do, they're afraid to get attached to them and fear that they're going to leave again. Abandonment anxiety in relationships. You may be afraid to let yourself be vulnerable in a relationship. Or you may have trust issues and worry excessively about your relationship. That can make you suspicious of your partner. Maybe you're constantly questioning them, and unintentionally or subconsciously. Maybe they're going places and you want to give them, like, 100 questions or the third degree, and maybe it's just something very simple, and you have no cause or justification to worry about your relationship, but from past experiences, your flags are just already up regardless, and whether they have right to be or not. And you're just always on your guard, just thinking that the worst is going to happen. And unfortunately, when you're in that state of mind, trying to enjoy the little things and the special moments in your relationship make it harder to do when you're constantly questioning their motive. And if it's something sincere or something really good, then you might think it's too good to be true, and then you're constantly, on guard. Um, it says symptoms of fear of abandonment. If you fear abandonment, you might recognize some of these symptoms as signs, and they list them. Overly sensitive to criticism. So, like if somebody might say something to you, you might automatically think they're criticizing you or coming at you, and you constantly feel like you have to defend yourself. So you're just very sensitive to everything. Difficulty trusting in others. Difficulty making friends unless you can be sure that they like you. So you might be afraid to make friends unless you absolutely positively know that they like you. And then sometimes when you make friends, you still question them. And it's very rare when you find a relationship with a friend that, you can feel very comfortable and confident with. I have a very good friend, and I don't see her very often, and we talk on occasion, but we're very close. And it's just life, as adults and stuff, we have our own things, but we, check in with each other, and we're very much, involved with each other on communication when we do talk. But as for seeing each other and going doing the things, obviously with my situation, it's a little harder to do at the moment, and she's not mobile at the moment. She doesn't have a car, so it makes it a little different, and we're like 45 minutes to an hour apart from each other. So um, those relationships are very rare. So if you have those, obviously hang on to them. Taking extreme measures to avoid rejection or separation. So you might actually be clingy to somebody, afraid of letting them go, afraid that they're going to go somewhere. You're constantly wanting to do something with them. You can't do anything without them, or vice versa. And so you guys are always together, and then you don't end up having your own separate identities and your own separate things to do. Pattern of unhealthy relationships. Getting attached to people too quickly, then moving on just as quickly. So you might be drawn to somebody and just get overly attached to them, in hopes to kind of make some type of, relationship, or wanting that feeling of being wanted or appreciated or needed or loved or whatever the case may be. So then you're automatically overly emotionally involved. And then sometimes when you get like that, you find that that person isn't exactly the way you have made them perceive to be, and then you just kind of lose interest and want to move on. Difficulty committing to a relationship, working too hard to please other people. I myself am guilty in that one. Um, I'm definitely a people person, even though I don't like people, if that makes any sense. But, always wanting to make sure that um, you try to make everybody happy and, trying to do the best for everybody. And when you do that, you actually forget about yourself in the process sometimes. And I've talked about that before. I have been trying to heal in a lot of ways, and I was really to the point where I was holding on to everybody and letting myself go. And I was pretty much just hanging on the side of the cliff, if you will, and nobody there was there to pull me back up. So I just got to the point where I had to find a way to find a different way up, if you will, and try to heal from there and not necessarily let go of those around me because obviously there are a lot of people that are going through things and whatever. So I'm the type of person that I love to help people. I love to be there for people, and more so than I have been for myself. And I have been trying to teach myself that I am just as important as other people, and that's been a big, huge growth and area that I'm trying very hard to work on. Let's see. It says blaming yourself when things don't work out. I've myself again. I have blamed myself a lot on things. Um, when you're always put on defense and always put down and stuff, through your life and talked about or made to feel like you're beneath or, people don't understand you or your personality or your way of thinking. And so they just constantly um, say things and put you down or question everything that you do. And then you start questioning your own self-worth and your own self. And then it's just easier to blame yourself when things go wrong than to understand that it's not always in your control and it's not always your thought or your fault. And sometimes taking ownership of things is not your role in the situation, even though you might be made to feel like it is. So, knowing the difference on when to own something and when to let something go sometimes is the biggest obstacle for me that I've been trying to work through. And blaming myself for things. I know, like, um, I'm constantly, well, actually, I'm trying to get better at it, but, you just always be defensive and always think that it's something negative, and it's hard to find something positive because you've been filled up with so much negativity in society and the way they have made you feel. And I've talked about that before. When you look in the mirror, who do you see? Do you see yourself or do you see what everybody else has made you feel? And getting your own self identity and your own self worth is sometimes the biggest, um, I have found the biggest healing process that is helpful. And it's to the point where you have to look in the mirror and actually see your own reflection instead of the reflection that other people have made you believe that you look like. And that has been a big thing. So, getting in there and looking at yourself and then blaming yourself for things that, you don't. That you just don't get, or you just so easy to take the blame that people have made you feel, and sometimes that in itself can give a bad reflection on you, and that is not what you deserve. It really isn't. Staying in a relationship, even if it is not healthy for you. Sometimes people stay in relationships because they think that they can constantly think that they can fix it, or they don't want to be alone. They have a fear of being alone, or they just want to be loved. And me myself, I've been in some relationships I wished for one I've never even went into, or stayed in any length of time. You believe in your your relationship, you believe in your vows, you believe in this and that, and sometimes it gets to the point where it's not a matter of what you believe in, it's a matter of doing what is healthy, because you should believe in yourself enough to know that you deserve healthy just as much as you deserve happy. And I myself am working on that as well. Causes a fear of abandonment. Abandonment issues in relationships. If you fear abandonment in your current relationship, it may be due to having been physically or emotionally abandoned in the past. For example, as a child, you may have experienced the death or desertion of a parent or a caregiver. I know, like, growing up and stuff, obviously parents separate. Sometimes one parent might not be actively involved, or you also have a lot of parent alienation going on. In some sense, I know, like I talked about before, my parents were very huge on that. It was sometimes very overwhelming, the way they were, and they didn't even stop to think about how it affected us kids, and it was just very traumatizing. And so then you got somebody who is coming in and out of your life based off of the other parent. And sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes you have parents that are not actively involved with their children. But then you also have children whose parents or guardians have passed away, or they might even have a major health condition or something of that nature. Or maybe they're constantly gone all the time. They might be in the military and they're deported, or not deported. um, they're sent overseas, or something like that, and deployed is the word I'm looking for, not deported. Deployed, or they're constantly in training, or maybe you have a first responder who is gone constantly, or whatever the case may be. You may have experienced parental neglect. You may have been rejected by your peers. Maybe growing up, some of your peers maybe weren't so keen into wanting to be friends with you, or maybe they made fun of you a lot, or bullied you, or pushed you around, or maybe you just stood out differently, and people didn't see you the same way. And I've my youngest daughter was that way. She actually made friends more with the teachers and the adults than she did with the children. She ate lunch a lot with the teachers, and she would call me or something, and she would tell me about how she had lunch with this one teacher or something and sat at the teacher's table, and because she really didn't relate to the kids her age, and she felt like she was different, and I told her, there's nothing wrong with being different. There are people that are different that don't, that think outside the box or creative differently. Those people are ones that make a big difference in the world. Those are the ones that are creative and they don't do things the same way as others. And if people go around doing the same thing as what everybody else does, then we just might as well be robots. And, I've always uh, try to teach her on how to accept who she is. And she's a beautiful young woman, and she has evolved in so many ways, and very creative, very artistic, um, and uh, very verbal. She's very verbal, but she is very mature for her age, and it very much shows. And sometimes, I think she has to remind herself um, that she's not as old as what her mentality is. But I don't think she wants to stop to think about that, because I know sometimes our younger generation are so quick to grow up. But I reassure you, it is not all that. So, but anyway, it says you went through a prolonged illness of a loved one. So maybe one of your parents, or your siblings, or your grandparents, or somebody, um, has gone through an illness or something severe, maybe some type of cancer, or maybe an amputation, or maybe a mental um, situation, or whatever the case may be, that might also affect somebody. who is always maybe constantly in the fear of losing them. I know, like with me, I have a very huge PTSD on my mom and her situation. You know, obviously with the trauma and stuff of the situation, my dad passing away, that was very traumatizing. And you know, it took me a long time to get to the point where I didn't blame myself for it. Because I did try to take the blame on that, even though I wasn't, I mean, it wasn't even like that. He had a heart attack. But I gave him CPR and stuff. And, you know, I carried that on my shoulders for a long time because I couldn't bring him back. And um, it was a very hard thing to carry. And obviously, with my mom's health declining and stuff, I've constantly got a fear, you know, of her, um, you know, because she's in pretty bad shape. And it's very difficult to sit back and watch. And, you know, her and I used to be very close and did a lot of things together. And she went blind in 2012. And, you know, it's gotten to the point now where she's my mother, but in a lot of aspects, I've lost my mother. And I don't mean it in a disrespecting way. I mean it as I try to go in there and I'll talk to her about something, and I can't do it because, for one, she don't want to hear it, or it starts an argument, or something. It never goes to where I can just go in there and sit down and talk to my mom, or her give me motherly advice, or stuff like she used to. Now you know, I've tried to go to her before, and you know, when I was very in a very dark place, and I was very, you know, trying to fight suicide and everything. And I tried to go to her one time, and it ended up turning into a big, huge argument. And she basically told me I just need to get over it. And you know, that for one, that's not what you tell somebody, you know. And I was also homeless for 2.5 years, and I tried to go to her on things, and it just wasn't happening. So I have just pretty much learned to pretty much um, keep things to myself. But I am also now in counseling, so my counselor gets a lot of me. So, and obviously my podcast too is very therapeutic, helps me in a lot of ways. So I do know that that is a factor for myself. And I'm sure I'm not the only one in the world that it goes through something like that. A romantic partner may have left you suddenly or behaved in an untrustworthy manner. I know sometimes when maybe a partner that you're with or something has a hard time making commitment, and or maybe being in a relationship scares them, so they play the back and forth game. They're there and then they're not, they're there then they're not, or they disappear for, you know, a couple days, or whatever the case may be. Or they say they're going to go somewhere and then they don't come back for a long time, or you know, and that's just constantly something that makes it difficult to work through and have any trust. And then if you're going through something at the same time and you need your significant other and they're never around, it makes it very difficult because, you know, they're supposed to be there for you just as much as you are for them. So then if you feel like you don't have them to go to, obviously you're going to be more guarded on what you can share with them, or how, I guess, comfortable you feel in your relationship with them. And then you're constantly got your guard up or your walls up, and that obviously is not a healthy relationship in itself. So such events can lead to a fear of abandonment. Avoidant personality disorder. Avoidant personality disorder is a personality disorder that can involve fear of abandonment, resulting in a person feeling socially inhibited or inadequate. So you might have trouble socializing with people, or maybe feeling like you're not good enough for your group, or questioning, you know, how you look, how you act, your appearance, whether or not your peers, again, even into adulthood, you don't even necessarily have to be a child, you know, constantly questioning whether or not you fit in. And, you know, I know for a fact I'm different. And I have gotten to, you know, that's just me. And, but to be honest, I can't say that I have not questioned my self worth, I guess, if you want to say, to groups and other people and stuff. Sometimes I feel like the black sheep of, you know, the environment or the family, or I know I'm the black sheep of the family, and I'm fine with that. Which I've talked about in my other podcasts. We've got a lot of bullies in our relatives, because you got family, you got relatives, and I have a lot of relatives. And, I'm okay with that. It hurts a lot, obviously, because, um, it's family should be able to be there for each other. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And you go through things. And sometimes it might be because it might be a traumatic event, or it might be something that is not totally understood. And it's something that you have to work through. But then other times you just got people that are straight up bullies, or just constantly um, inadequate, if you will, on their own self reflection, that they want to reflect it on you. And it's always easier to put somebody else on defense than for somebody else to own what they need to own. So some signs and symptoms are nervousness, poor self esteem, intense fear of being negatively judged or rejected, discomfort in social situations. So you might get like social anxiety. Um, Believe it or not, I get social anxiety. I know, like, with being here with my mom a lot, before I was a social bug, now I have to ease back into society. So sometimes I'll go somewhere and it's very overwhelming to me, and I'm thinking I just need to go home, and I'm so used to being inside these walls that I'm trying to get myself to at least open the front door once a day, because I know sometimes a week would go by and I hadn't even opened the front door. And that's not healthy. That's not healthy at all. And trying to ease back into the world is something that I'm trying to gradually do, even if it's just opening the door and going outside and taking a breath of the world outside, and trying to be a part of it. Even if I don't socialize with anybody, just going out and at least seeing the world outside these walls is a huge accomplishment for me now. And I know before, that would probably sound silly for somebody to say that I would be like this, but it's true. And I know, like, one time I had went somewhere that I had went all the time, and there was a crowd in there, and I knew almost everybody in there, but it was so socially overwhelming. I kept going out to my car and going back in, going back out to my car and going back. And I was trying to talk myself into staying, but so ready to go because I couldn't handle all the people in there. And one of my friends looked at me and she's like, "Come over here and sit down. Sit down here next to me and we'll work through it." And we did. And she understood exactly where I was at. And she helped me through it. And I ended up staying, and I didn't really get up and socialize too much, but I was able to sit in the chair, and not get up and panic and go outside and ready to, run basically. um, Avoidance of group activities or self-imposed social isolation. So, like, if somebody might have like an activity or a party, or some type of group outing, or something, you might be quick to want to avoid it, or have something else to do, or um, just kind of avoid talking to that person or making a commitment to it. Borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is another personality disorder in which intense fear of abandonment can play a role. Other signs and symptoms can include unstable relationships, distorted self image, extreme impulsiveness, mood swings and inappropriate anger, difficulty being alone. Many people who have borderline personality disorder say they are sexually or physically abused as children. Others grew up amid intense conflict or had family members with the same condition. Um, I probably have quite a bit of that, actually. Separation anxiety disorder. If a child doesn't outgrow separation anxiety and it interferes with daily activities, they may have separation anxiety disorder. Other signs and symptoms of separation anxiety disorder can include frequent panic attacks, distress at the thought of being separated from a loved one, refusal to leave home without a loved one or being left at home alone, nightmares involving being separated from loved ones, physical issues like maybe a stomach ache or a headache when you're separated from a loved one. So you might, um, get a big, huge panic attack, or your anxiety might be elevated. If you're left alone, or if you have to go somewhere and you don't want to go alone. It's, I guess, kind of like society stage fright, if you want to call it that. Teens and adults can have separation anxiety disorder too. Obviously, I don't think any type of disorder knows, oh, hey, they're this old, so we need to cut off now. Obviously, if you have it, I don't, unless you really get adequate therapy and intervention for it, I really don't foresee it going away. Long term effects of fear of abandonment. Long term effects of fear of abandonment can include the following: difficult relationships with peers and romantic partners. So it may be difficult for you to be in a relationship with somebody, or even in a friendship relationship, because you're always afraid that it's going to end, or they're going to go away, or somebody's going to take them away, or whatever the case may be. You'll have low self esteem, trust issues. So just trying to trust somebody in general, or being able to you know confide in somebody for one, and feel like whatever you're going to say to them is not going to be twisted around and later on you're made fun of, or used against you or whatever. And I know sometimes that can be a factor with people. There's a lot of things that people have entrusted me with, and even though we don't talk anymore or something, I still have kept it to myself. Um, let's see, anger issues, mood swings. Oh, I've got that one. Codependency, fear of intimacy. Maybe you question yourself. If you have low self esteem and stuff, maybe you might question yourself on the way you look, or maybe you're not as experienced in certain ways, so you're questioning the way that you perform or the way that your partner perceives you. You might be self conscious, so you might be constantly trying to cover yourself up, or double checking yourself and not being able to actually enjoy the moment that you're in with your significant other. Anxiety disorders, panic disorders, and good old depression. um, and depression comes in many, many forms and different levels. And unfortunately, I have been in the very deep, deep parts of that, and slowly trying to climb my way out. So obviously, there's different stages of it, and I know that people obviously have it a lot harder and a lot more severe than what others do, but that doesn't mean that just because your case and scenario may be different than somebody's, that the emotion behind it isn't just as intense, because people handle things differently than what other people do. And so one thing might not seem like a big deal to somebody, but to somebody else it's a big, huge tragedy. Maybe this is the only thing they've ever had to deal with before. And so obviously they handle things in a different order. Examples of fear of abandonment. Here are a few examples of what fear and abandonment can look like. Your fear is so significant that you don't allow yourself to get close enough to anyone to let that happen. You may think no attachment, no abandonment. Um, and I can understand that, being involved with somebody or wanting to start a relationship. You can only explain your life and your feelings so many times to people. And your emotions should not be a revolving door. And sometimes getting attached to somebody, um, it's easier just to stay to yourself than to go through the pain of not feeling self-worthy, or not knowing if you're going to, um, you know, be good enough, if you will, for somebody to want to stay in your life. You might question why wasn't I good enough, or why wasn't I worth loving, or why wasn't I worthy enough? What's wrong with me? And I had this one guy I was married to, and he told me once, in your next relationship, don't be yourself, and maybe it might work. And it's kind of like, when you tell people this, and you're abused in so many ways, um, mentally, emotionally, even physically. It's easier just to stay to yourself than to go through any type of pain like that again. But also, too, when you do put yourself into somebody, and you give them your whole heart, and you trust, in them, and you trust your relationship and your feelings. I guess a lot of it would be trusting your feelings. So when you trust your feelings on how you feel about somebody, um, all to be feeling left alone and abandoned, it's kind of hard to um, have an attachment with anybody else. When you have a big, huge fear of being left behind again, and you want so much to let your guard down, but you've always got that one little, speck of emotion that is hesitant, even though you want that emotion so much to go away, of the negativity of it, because, like I said, deep down, everybody wants to feel wanted, loved, and appreciated and needed. And sometimes it's very hard to have that emotion when you don't even know what that emotion even is, or have ever even felt it before. You worry obsessively about your perceived faults and what others may think of you. You're an ultimate people pleaser. You don't want to take any chances that someone won't like you enough to stick around. So maybe you go above and beyond being a friend, or you want to continuously shower somebody with um, appreciation and emotions, and sometimes that can be overbearing and overpowering, and it might actually end up pushing some people away because it's too much. Um, you're absolutely crushed when someone offers a bit of criticism or gets upset with you in any way. You overreact when you feel slighted. You feel inadequate and unappealing. You might feel unwanted, unlovable, unneeded. Like if maybe if when your children grow up and you go through empty nesting, and you've been a parent um, for majority of your life, um, you feel inadequate, or loss of identity. Like, who am I now? um, or if you've went through a major change in your appearance, maybe you've gained weight, maybe you've lost a lot of weight, maybe you've aged, and then or you're around people that are to you look more beautiful on the outside, that it makes you lose track of the beauty that you have on the outside and the inside, for that matter. So then you feel unappealing to others, and then obviously your self-esteem is at play. You break up with a romantic partner so they won't break up with you. Be quick to the punch, I guess. You're clingy even when the other person asks for space. So somebody might be like, hey, I need to go do my own thing, but you're so overbearing with it, um, that it becomes an issue, because you're so codependent on um, having an emotional connection that it seems too overpowering and suffocating, if you will, to someone, and like they just can't breathe in the relationship. You're often jealous, suspicious, or critical of your partner. I think that's self-explanatory. Um, Diagnosing fear of abandonment. Fear of abandonment isn't a diagnosable mental health disorder, but it can certainly be identified and addressed. Also, fear of abandonment can be part of a diagnosable personality disorder or other disorder that should be treated. Healing abandonment issues. Once you recognize your fear of abandonment, there are some things you can do to begin healing. Cut yourself some slack and stop the harsh self-judgment. Again, I have been working on this, um, trying to heal yourself of the negative side. So, like with society making you perceive yourself and think of yourself a certain way, trying to take that negative side and um, flip it around or readjust it, if you will, to something positive and try to de escalate yourself. So when you start being negative with yourself, like saying, I'm ugly, or I don't like the way my face looks, or my hair is this, it doesn't fit right and looks stupid and I need to cut it off, or I'm fat and I'm ugly, or I got a big butt, or, my feet are ugly, or whatever the case may be. Trying to uh, look at yourself again for the first time and actually see you. But also, look in your eyes and see your inner beauty, instead of looking at your reflection and um, not even seeing yourself and seeing what society is trying to make you look like. Being over fashionable, and trying to dress yourself up. Which there's nothing wrong with feeling beautiful and wanting to decorate yourself. However, doing it because society is into it and you're trying to keep up with the times is not the reason and the cause for that. That's not necessary. Doing it because it makes you feel better, and makes your self-esteem escalated in a positive direction, or raises your endorphins in a positive way. That's good. You want to do things that want to build your self-esteem up and make you feel better about yourself, but don't do it because society is making you feel pressured to do it. Do it because that's the way you feel, or that's the way you want to see yourself. Don't wear society's reflection. Wear your own. It says, obviously talk to the other person about your fear of abandonment and how it came to be. But be mindful of what you expect of others. Explain where you're coming from, but don't make your fear of abandonment something for them to fix. Don't expect more of them than what is reasonable. But also, too, don't put them on the defense either. There's one way. There's a right way and a wrong way to approach somebody on your emotions and your feelings. Don't go in and start immediately attacking somebody. You make me feel this, you make me feel that. Instead of try to do it like, I feel like this, and this is, why I think this is, and, or this, whatever the case may be. But don't come in there and trying to put somebody on defense automatically, because you're not going to get anywhere. And that's not what the conversation needs to be about anyway. You're going in there to try to open up to somebody that you entrust and that you care about, to try to talk about um, why you are acting the way you are, why you feel the way you are, and trying to help them to understand you and where you're coming from. But also in doing so, you might also realize that they might have a lot of the same issues. And so maybe they have been in relationships um, that have been opposite of you. And so they are, um, I guess, kind of been in a relationship where somebody has been like that and they can't handle that again. And so understanding where that comes from, or why you need to work with each other. But sometimes you need to work through things as well. And maybe taking baby steps, not necessarily doing a big, huge separation thing, but maybe small things, like maybe at one time, even just once a week, go to the store by yourself, or even something as simple as going to the gas station by yourself, or just something different, or go in separate rooms at your house. Maybe somebody can go, do something productive in another room, go read a book, or maybe somebody can go work out in the yard and just kind of do your own things. One person knows that the other person is there, but yet you're giving that person some space to have their own bubble, if you will. Work on maintaining friendships and building your support network. Strong friendships can boost your self worth and sense of belonging. If you find this unmanageable, consider speaking to a qualified therapist. You may benefit from individual counseling. So maybe you have something a little bit deeper going on. and talking to someone who is non-biased, and has like the outside looking in. But also too, I always say, your therapist can only be as therapeutic as the information you give them. Because, and all due respect to my therapist if he's listening, and he probably doesn't expect anything less out of me. And the reason why I say this is because your therapist can try to offer help and direction, but if the only information they're getting is the way that you're giving it without giving all sides to it, then it's kind of difficult to be objective in a positive manner that's actually therapeutic. So if you're in a relationship or something with someone, and you're acting a certain way, be honest with yourself on why you're acting that way. But also, too, be honest with yourself on the way your partner or significant other actually truly is. And maybe actually try to look at it from an objective point of view instead of the defensive point of view or a controlling point of view. Because when you do that, um, then the therapist or whomever you're talking to is not able to be objective, and actually have a positive input for you that is constructive. Instead, they're basing it off what information you're giving. So if you're doing a conversation with them and you're just bashing this other person and you're just talking about all this negative stuff, um, and it's just all about the negativity on them and all the positive side, but you neglect a part of this is maybe why they acted this way, or left out positive things they said, or you're just trying to present the negative drama side. And if that's what you're trying to do, you're not going to get anywhere positive. You're not going to resolve any issues. And you know, I've heard somebody say one time, I think it was Dr. Phil, said, do you want to take care of the situation or do you want to be right? And that's true. Do you just want to be right or do you want to try to fix it and heal? So you have to be honest with yourself, but at the same time, you have to be afraid not to own yourself either. And whether that's negative or positive, you have to take ownership for who you are. And in order to be able to heal, and obviously in order to be able to um, not only heal yourself, but to heal your relationship, but also to if you're with somebody and you love them and you're dedicated to them, even if it's your children, why wouldn't you want to try your best to admit your mistakes and own the things that you do? But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it to yourself. You don't need to bash yourself in order to um, try to be positive and heal. And I know a lot of times I have been very bad at that, where I have bashed myself several times. And that's not who I need to be. That's not therapeutic for me, and that's not a healing process. If anything, it's making things for my mental state of mind worse. And I know, like before, I've talked about, um, the side of me who um, was falling, and was suicidal and self-harming and stuff. That person is trying to heal, and that person is trying to help um, take ownership of the negative sides of the world, but also to the reaction of myself to that negativity and to that trauma and to the situations that I've been through. And so the personality part of me that was trying to harm me and kill me is now trying to save my life and heal me. And trying to come to terms with that person is the key point of my survival. But being honest with myself and recognizing that is very vital of my lifeline. And that is where a lot of it comes in. But also, too, sometimes you can have abandonment issues. And I know this is probably going to sound silly, maybe to some, but you can have abandonment issues toward yourself. And this is me adding this in there. And I believe this with myself because I feel like I have abandoned myself in a lot of situations. I have let myself go in so many ways. and I have abandoned myself. I've abandoned my feelings. I've abandoned my self worth. I've abandoned my physical attributes. There's so many things that are there, and whether it's been intentional or non intentional, I've abandoned myself. So, trying to teach myself to be dependent on myself without being codependent on myself has been something that I'm trying to uh, understand and try to make um, a part of my growth. And like I've said before, I'm trying to grow and I'm in preschool right now with it. So I'm still trying to learn, but being honest with myself, um, and instead of trying to put negative things at me, I'm trying to put positive things at me. So instead of saying, hey, you're stupid, you know better. Why would you do that? You're just being stupid, or something of that nature. Um, I try not to do that anymore because I'm not stupid. I might make mistakes. I might say something wrong, or I'm human, but I'm far from stupid. And I have to teach myself that all the negativity and all the things I have went through, constantly being made fun, of my education or um, just me in general. I have to become bigger than the brat, if you will. And sometimes that's very easier said than done. But I have to learn that if I can be, I used to say, you can't rely on anything. The only person you rely on is yourself, and sometimes that's iffy, but that's true. But at the same time, I have to teach myself that I need to be better at that because I do need to be better at being able to depend on my own self. And if I can't depend on myself, then I'm abandoning myself. And if I'm abandoning myself, then what hope do I have? If that makes any sense. So I'm trying to work through that and grow through that as much as anything else, actually. Um, how to help someone with abandonment issues. So it says here are a few strategies to try if someone you know is dealing with a fear of abandonment. Start a conversation. Encourage them to talk about it, but don't pressure them. Obviously, if somebody doesn't want to talk about it, you don't badger them to death. Whether it makes sense to you or not, don't understand that the fear is real for them. So what might not be real for you doesn't mean it's not real for them. And just because you can't understand it doesn't mean you can't have empathy. And doesn't mean that you need to be judgmental. Doesn't mean that you need to be a bitch about it. I mean, honestly, when somebody comes to you and wants to talk or confide in you, um, I don't know about you guys, but that's a big deal for me. Um, but at the same time, too, if you approach somebody and trying to start a conversation with them or wanting to reassure them in some way or redirect them or be there for them, you don't then turn it around and be condescending or judgmental or turn it around to be about you. Um, but at the same time, if you start a conversation, sometimes the best part of being in a conversation is to be the listener. Because a lot of times people just really need to just get it out and vent and talk. They don't necessarily need any input. They just need to know that somebody cares enough to listen and somebody cares enough to want to care enough about their feelings, their well-being, and what is going on with them. And that in itself is a huge thing. And if they have abandonment issues or feel like that they've tried to go to people or tried to confide in people and it just never went in a positive direction, eventually they're going to quit going to somebody. They're going to quit trying to talk about it and they're just going to isolate themselves, close down and withdraw. And eventually it builds up and that's very unhealthy. But at the same time, too, that's not going to get anybody anywhere, especially if you're trying to have a relationship with this person, whether it be a friendship or anything else. Um, I know, like sometimes I used to, try to go to my mom and stuff and talk to her about things, and it would turn into a huge, huge argument, and it was just always, um, you know, she would always say, "Well, it's always about you," or "What about me? What my feelings?" I'm like, I came to you to talk to you about what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. So we're at this equation, you know, this is what it was supposed to be about. I'm trying to talk to you about my feelings. And it would just escalate so bad that eventually I quit doing it. I quit going there to try to have a conversation with her on my emotions or my feelings. And, sometimes I would try to open up to her, and then I would hear her gossiping on the phone about me, or something, and twisting everything around. Or she would say stuff like, she would add things in there that weren't true to make her look more, I mean, with all due respect, like a badass. And, that's hurtful. That's very hurtful. So when it gets to the point where you feel like you can't confide in somebody, or you can't go to somebody because either one, you are made to feel like a piece of poop, because you're trying to, um, acknowledge your emotions and get them out, but you're also trying to confide in somebody that you have entrusted with your feelings, just to be made out to be basically everything but that. And so you just end up closing down. And um, it just started building up. And I would go out to my camper and take my emotions out there. And eventually my walls were just soaked with my tears. And it was getting to the point where it was getting dangerous. And I had to find a way to overcome that. And by the grace of God and, a few other things in my life that have happened in positive directions, I am slowly healing from those episodes. And I have readjusted. I've readjusted myself, and trying to readjust myself to be more positive with me. And like I've said before, I talk to myself all the time. And when I talk out loud, people think I'm crazy. When I talk to myself in my head, I make myself crazy. So, but I've gotten to the point that it has to be healthy for me, because my mental state of mind is just as important, if not more important, than the rest of me. And I have acknowledged that. And at the same time, I am owning that, and I'm doing something about it. And it's taken a long time, but I can't look at the negative side of it's taken a long time. I have to look at it the positive side as at least it's happening now. Not at least it's happening, it's happening now. I can't keep focusing on what could have been, should have been, wasn't, and I need to look at what is. And I need to try to find the positive sides of it. And the more I try to find the happy and positive side of things, helps me to work through the pain and the negative side. And so that's been a big, huge accomplishment in myself. And for the first time in my life, and I've talked about this before, the parts of me that wanted to die, um, I can honestly say now, for the first time in my life, I want to live. And that is a huge acknowledgement for myself, because I was abandoning myself. I was abandoning my life. And I was surrendering and ready just to hand it over to all the things that were hurting me. And I've had to own that. And I think that is the most hugest um, wall, if you will, that I am trying to take down. Because if I can't take the wall down to see my own reflection, um, then I have nowhere to go. And that's not what I want in my life anymore. Um, So, another thing that you can do um, is assure them that you won't abandon them. Now, that's easier said than done, obviously, because if somebody has abandonment issues, you can reassure them all you want, because honestly, I'm sure that other people in their life have probably done that just as much. So sometimes it's not a matter of just your words, it's actually just about your patience and your understanding and your actions. And not saying that it's not important to reassure them, but reassure them in an action, not in just your wording. Not saying that words are not important and don't have effect on somebody, but if you don't have an action backed behind that word, then it's just words. It's just empty words. And I'm sure it's empty words that they've heard a gazillion times. It's the action behind those words that is probably going to make the difference, because that's probably going to be the different thing that they're not used to. Ask what you can do to help. Suggest therapy, but don't push it. If they express a desire to move forward, offer your assistance in finding a qualified therapist. Don't try to necessarily play therapist to them, um, but at the same time, too, don't think that your input and your presence isn't just as important, because sometimes um, just having the um, the feeling that somebody cares enough to want to care enough about their emotions is something that they're not used to. So that in itself is a big, huge stepping stone for them. When to see a doctor. If you tried to, but can't manage your fear of abandonment on your own, or if you have symptoms of panic disorder, anxiety disorder, depression, you might want to talk to a healthcare provider. Obviously, they have a lot of um, different resources and mechanisms that can help you through this. Um, you can start with your primary care physician, maybe do a complete checkup to see, make sure you're healthy. Your mental health, like I said, is just as important as your physical health. I know, like with me going to my family doctor right now, we haven't even begun um, my physical part of me. We're still working on my mental part of me. So she wants to get my mental state of mind healthy enough, then she's going to concentrate on my health, physical well being. And right now, that's been um, very important, but it's also been um, very beneficial for me, because she does take the time to talk to me and listen to me, and she doesn't just do like an automatic, this is my standard medication. you know um, she actually puts a lot of thought into it, and doesn't try to pacify me, if you will. She doesn't sugarcoat things in the sense of just thinking she needs to just slap a medication or a band-aid on it. And that makes me feel good just in itself too. And obviously, I'm in counseling, mental therapist, and I'm in physical therapy. So trying to take care of myself in all directions has also been a key thing for me, because it's also helping me to teach myself that all the years that I've been abandoning myself, I actually have acknowledged my own well being. So it's helping me to own that part of me. And at the same time, too, that helps benefit me to know um, that I have been able to depend on myself. Even if sometimes um, I do get my attacks and stuff still here and there, but I try to work through them um, a lot. And I try to have backups to my different coping mechanisms, because sometimes what works for one thing doesn't always work with another. And if you got abandonment issues, um, and just a variety of different things, even depression, and you have like anxiety disorders or panic attacks, those in itself are very overpowering. And it can take you to places that nobody deserves to be. Um, and that's like a double dose of um, your mental state of mind, and everything just coming at you at once, and trying to balance life and trying to readjust to your own state of mind can be very overwhelming in itself. So sometimes making sure that one, you could try to de escalate yourself and try to go over mechanisms that might work for you in times that you're not escalated. Because when you're in that time of need, it's hard to think rationally. So trying to think of things um, ahead of time and have backup plans. Even maybe if you have three or four different ways, there's nothing wrong with that. And I've talked about some of my coping mechanisms in some of my other podcasts and stuff. Like I would say my ABCs inside my head or out loud, and I would say them slow enough. And then at the end, when it says, won't you sing with me, then I would take a deep breath, and then I would start over. Or, you take your ABCs and you can think of different words that start with the alphabet, or you can count. Or you can do animals and animal sounds, kind of like Old McDonald or something. Um, or you can do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I do that a lot. Or you can talk to yourself, give yourself a pep talk. Or I know sometimes when it gets really bad and I have not been able to de-escalate myself, I have literally physically had to get up and go outside. And I've done that before at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And my anxiety was so bad and I couldn't stop crying. It was so rough that I had to get up and have a change of scenery. And so I went outside and I stood on the front porch, and it was cold outside. But I took a deep breath in and tried to take in the change of scenery. Obviously, with it being cold out there, I kind of tried to do it a little quickly, but at the same time, too, actually doing it um, in a quality way. Because sometimes it's not about the quantity; it's about the quality. And so going out there and actually trying to take advantage of my purpose of being out there, and trying to readjust myself and then come back in and redirect myself in a positive manner. And obviously, I've had some really, really um, rough times. Sometimes I cry so much it makes me sick. Or I've had some seizures and stuff in my past, and things, and trying to get myself under control has been the biggest challenge. But knowing to do it in a non-controlling way is a therapeutic challenge. So, and this is just me trying to reteach myself. This is me trying to grow, but this is also me trying to learn. Because I can teach myself all I want, but if I'm not trying to learn from what I'm teaching myself, then I'm just banging my head to the wall. And I might as well just not even be doing anything, because if I'm not going to take in what I'm trying to learn and teach myself and do it in a therapeutic and realistic way, then I might as well just stay where I'm at, because I'm not going to get anything out of it. And then it's just empty words to myself. It's just empty actions to myself. And then if I'm doing that, then I might as well be abandoning myself again. So I've been trying to work around that and learn from myself. It says without treatment, personality disorders may lead to depression, maybe substance abuse, and social isolation. I know a lot of people might self medicate, and I've talked about this before. Self medication is not just about drugs and alcohol. Self medication comes in many, many forms. You could be a compulsive eater, you can be binging and purging, you could be a compulsive shopper, maybe a shoplifter, a kleptomaniac, you could be obsessed with. Um, maybe video games, maybe um, work. You might be a workaholic. You might be obsessed with, maybe working out a lot and obsessed with your fitness, to where you take it to the extreme. I mean, there's one thing to be physical, fit, and healthy, and there's a thing to take it to the extreme. Um, there's a lot of different things that you can do that are basically self medicating, and some can be very unhealthy. Um, but isolation and isolating yourself and withdrawing yourself, that might even, I guess, if you want to look at, could be also a form of self medicating. Because if you're isolating yourself away from the world and you're you're doing as a form of coping and dealing, and you're obsessed with not going out anywhere, and you're obsessed with not doing anything, and you're just staying within the walls of whatever and just breaking yourself totally off, that in itself is not healthy and therapeutic either. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of different coping mechanisms, but if you're doing it in a way that is not healthy, it can be very overwhelming and very deadly. And sometimes, when you get to that point, when you look the abyss straight up in the eye, um, you have to get to the point where you either let it um, engulf you and consume you, or you get strong enough to blow it a kiss and know that you're okay to walk away from it, or at least linger away from it, even if it's just slowly stepping away. Um, that's a huge thing in itself, survival. And you sometimes you have to find ways to bring life back into yourself. When your own breath is suffocating you, trying to find a way to bring life back into your own self and your own breath um, is a whole different form of, um, you know, basically survival. And sometimes it is a life and death situation. So obviously, if you have a fear of abandonment, it can have a negative impact on you and your relationships and your well-being. And there's things that you can do to minimize your fears and basically work on where you're at in life and owning and acknowledging that your abandonment is not, don't take the blame for it and do the blaming game. Don't look at it as that. Look at it as you've been through a lot. Don't dwell in it, but now, hey, what can I do to actually survive? Instead of just hovering and going with the flow of things and trying to just go through the motions of being alive without living, what can you do now to feel alive and actually want to breathe life back into you? And it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something that's going to happen in your next relationship. It's going to be something that you're going to have to work on probably pretty much your whole life. But hopefully, in time, with the right resources and the right support of people that you're involved with or you're around, or even with the right support of yourself, um, it's doable. But first and foremost, I think with me, trying to get through the sense of abandonment has to start with me. It has to start with myself. And like I said, trying to learn how to not abandon myself is going to help me teach myself to not feel abandoned by other people, if that makes any sense. And obviously, if you get to the point where it is overwhelming to you and you can't cope with it, you can't deal with it, and it does overtake you, and you get down to the point where you're looking the abyss in the eye, maybe you don't even realize that's where you're at. Because sometimes when you get caught up in an emotion that is so maybe unfamiliar or so overwhelming or so um, you just don't understand and you don't know how to cope with it. You don't know how to calm yourself down. You don't know how to de escalate. You don't know what to do with your feelings. You don't know where to put them. And it takes you over. Um, just know that there are people out there that can help you. And I say knowing that and having the enough strength to be able to acknowledge that and reach out to somebody sometimes is easier said than done. Because when you get at a point in your life where you are, you have abandoned yourself to the most ultimate place and it's not intentional. It's just a point where you don't want to die. You just want the pain to stop. You want the emotions to be a little bit more bearable and you don't know where to put them. So they're a heavy load to carry on you. And sometimes when you carry them so much that it drowns you and you don't know what to do. You don't know how to get out of it, and you're overwhelmed, and it just covers you up, and it consumes you. And if you get to that point, obviously finding a coping mechanism is very vital in survival. But at the same time, too, um, if you are at any point in your life that you feel that way, I pray that you have enough strength to reach out for help. 980 is the survival suicide helpline. They have a lot of skilled professional resources that they can help you with. I know I talk about this in every single one of my podcasts. It's very important to try not to let go of yourself any more than what you feel like you don't have yourself, if that makes any sense. Um, Sometimes in life, if you hold on to other people and push other people above the water, it's going to drown you. And if you don't have a way to save yourself, you don't have a life jacket per se, then the odds are not in your favor. And nobody should ever be left to feel that way. And sometimes your only way of soul survival, your only life raft, um, is yourself. And if you're not strong enough, then obviously you need to find resources to help you be more equipped to do whatever you need to do in those situations to bring back life in yourself, but also to give you the right type of equipment and resources to um, to save you. I mean, point blank, because it is a matter of life and death sometimes. And it takes one moment, it takes one tragedy, it takes one episode to put you somewhere where you never thought you would be. So before you sit back and say, no, that's not me, or I would never do that, or, um, this could never happen, or, you know, whatever the case may be, everybody is one breath, one moment, one tragedy, one episode, one scenario, one grain of sand away from that being reality. Do not think you're immune. Nobody is immune to it. I promise you that. Um, but like I said, if you are feeling any type of way like that, please reach out to 988 or somebody that you do and trust. And I know sometimes trying to find somebody that you trust enough to open up your feelings, that is that level of deepness, because sometimes it can feel embarrassing to admit to somebody that you may be suicidal or you may be in some type of mental uncertainty of, uh, sanity with yourself, um, or self-harming yourself. It's difficult to find the right person or feel comfortable enough to be able to confine that level in somebody. So obviously, going to maybe your um, family doctor or um, calling 988 or some type of professional, they are very equipped, very trained, and very non-biased and judgmental on getting you the right kind of help. Because nobody deserves to feel um, like they want to die just for their pain to stop. You deserve to be able to breathe and not want it to be your last. So, and if you are feeling that way, my heart goes out to you and deeply, deeply in my prayers. So, on that note, I'm going to close out now. And as always, if you have dedicated your time in listening to me, I always say that is one thing in your life that you can't get back, and that's your time. And if you have dedicated and listened to me from the bottom of my heart, I thank you undoubtedly. And even if um, need to or whatever, and you need to reach out to me, I'm always available to correspond with you and try to get you resources if need be to help you find a better, safe, and healthier way of wanting to be alive. So don't think that, don't, let me say this in a respectful way because I can say don't think. I pray that you don't feel that you're alone in this battle because I, for one, can vouch for um, that level of emotion. So, again, 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline. Thank you for all your time that you have dedicated to me. And feel free to check out my other podcasts as well. I also have a YouTube channel. D, Let Me Clear My Throat. And like I said, eventually I'm going to be doing video. I'm still trying to work all the kinks out on that. So until next time, I hope everybody has a safe and blessed evening. Good night.